Most men have no idea. The very moments they cherish, affection, praise, selfless acts, can be the sharpest tools used against them. It feels amazing in the moment. Your ego swells. You feel loved. But beneath the surface, it's leverage. And the more you fall for it, the less control you have over your own choices. You're being managed by tactics that wear the mask of love. If you're tired of being cornered, tired of feeling like you're walking on eggshells, even when things are supposedly good, stay with me. I've spent years studying these hidden patterns in relationships, watching how good men get cornered without ever noticing the walls closing in. The hard truth: most of you have already been manipulated. You just didn't have the language to name it. That's why I'm here at Stoic Manhood Guide. Not to sugarcoat, not to blame, but to cut through the fog and give you the clarity no one else dares to. You're not weak, you're untrained. And when you understand the tactics being used, you'll never look at love the same way again. In this video, I'll break down 5 loving gestures that are actually manipulation. You'll learn how to spot them before they tighten the grip on you. Because if you value cold truth over comforting lies, you need to know this now. Stay sharp, because the first tactic I'm about to uncover looks flattering on the surface, but underneath it's a leash disguised as a gift. Let's dive in. We've established that the very qualities you cherish, your kindness, your desire to please, your focus on connection, can be weaponized against your freedom. Now, we move beyond the surface and delve deep into the 5 most common, insidious tactics used to control men. Each one looks like love, but underneath, it's a direct, calculated assault on your autonomy and self-sovereignty. 1. Over-the-top praise, the leash disguised as a gift. Picture this. She looks you dead in the eyes and says, "You're the most alpha man I've ever met. No one could ever compare to your discipline." Your chest swells, your ego lights up. You feel validated, seen, and invincible. And that, gentlemen, is the moment your shield dropped. When a compliment is genuine, it lands softly. It feels earned and requires no immediate reciprocation. But when it's constant, exaggerated, or perfectly timed just before she asks for something significant, you're not being appreciated, you're being buttered up. This isn't love, it's a psychological setup. The hidden mechanism, psychological debt. She's creating a subtle psychological debt in your mind. The goal is simple: you feel indebted, softened, and when the real request comes, say, lending a large sum of money, or canceling a commitment with your family, it feels impossible to say no. The manipulation works by appealing to your identity. She builds a pattern, constantly affirming you are generous, thoughtful, or one of a kind. Then, when she wants something big, she frames the request as if agreeing proves you are the great man she described. Suddenly, saying no doesn't just mean turning down a request. It feels like betraying the identity she crafted for you. You are cornered by the pressure to live up to the projected image. Most men fold, not because they genuinely want to, but because the cost of disappointing that constructed identity is too high. The long-term cost, when validation becomes a tool for compliance, you are no longer in a spontaneous, genuine relationship. You are in a silent transaction. You internalize the idea that your self-worth is conditional, that you must continually perform the role of the best man to maintain her affection and praise. This destroys your authenticity. The cold truth: if her compliments always come with a hidden invoice, she isn't celebrating you, she's conditioning you. How to reclaim your power from praise: delay gratification. When the compliments pile up, resist the urge to react instantly with effusive gratitude. Smile, acknowledge the kind words, but keep your head clear. A delayed, neutral "thank you, I appreciate that" prevents her from anchoring you in an emotional high that makes you easy to sway. Split the request. If the compliment immediately precedes an ask, "You're so financially smart, can you help me with this business idea?" your reply must deliberately split them apart. "I appreciate you saying that, but let's look at the financial request on its own merit." This forces the issue to stand on logic, not emotion. Test the intent. Genuine admiration survives rejection, manipulation doesn't. If you delay your answer or say no to the request, and the compliments suddenly stop or turn into passive-aggressive guilt trips, you have exposed the hidden motive. A manipulative compliment is bait. A real compliment is a gift. 2. Strategic vulnerability. The emotional ambush. You finally muster the courage to enforce a boundary. You need 2 nights a week alone to work on your side business. Instead of a direct discussion, she suddenly breaks down. Tears flow. She tells you, "Every man I've ever loved has prioritized work over me. If you take this time, I'll feel abandoned and worthless." Now pause. The conversation has completely shifted from a practical boundary to a guilt-soaked drama. And that's the trap. The psychological trap. Weaponized pain. This is weaponized vulnerability. It's an emotional ambush designed not to connect with you, but to corner you. Men are fundamentally wired to protect and comfort. The moment a woman shares something deeply painful, your defenses drop, and the impulse to solve her pain overrides your need for a boundary. You instantly feel like the villain if you hold your ground. Now, the issue isn't about your 2 nights a week. It's about proving you're not heartless or not like all the other men. You forget that every one of these tearful confessions magically appears right before you enforce a limit. That isn't coincidence, that's calculation. She's strategically using her past wounds as a shield to block your future needs. The long-term cost, if you give in every time, you don't just lose the argument, you lose your voice. Your needs get buried under her pain, and slowly, your boundaries cease to exist. You transition from being a man in a relationship to a man managed by guilt and emotional avoidance. The cold truth. Authentic vulnerability invites closeness. Strategic vulnerability demands compliance. How to stop the emotional ambush? Acknowledge the feeling, redirect the focus. You must show compassion without allowing the subject to change. Say, "And I understand this is painful for you, but we need to finish discussing the schedule itself before we dive into your past." This validates her emotion while firmly redirecting the focus back to the logical decision. Spot the timing. Genuine vulnerability is random. Manipulative vulnerability shows up like clockwork, right when you're about to say no, or when accountability is looming. Perfect timing is a major red flag. Refuse the guilt. Ask yourself, would I still agree to this if she hadn't shared this emotional story right now? If your answer is no, you've spotted manipulation. You cannot allow your life to be steered by sympathy over your own needs and truth. If every boundary conversation turns into a therapy session about her wounds, you're in emotional captivity. 3. The self-sacrifice move. The hidden invoice. Picture this. She wakes up early, drives across town to buy you an obscure vintage comic book you mentioned once, unasked. She beams with pride. You feel seen, cared for, and maybe even a little guilty for not doing something equally thoughtful. Fast forward 3 days. You tell her you can't make it to her mandatory work gala because you have a critical deadline. Her tone shifts instantly. "After everything I do for you, buying that comic book, rearranging my whole day, you can't even come with me just this once." The psychological trap. The emotional ledger. That so-called sacrifice was never a gift. It was an investment, an emotional deposit stored away in the "you owe me" account. This tactic sets up a transaction where affection today becomes obligation tomorrow. It works because humans are wired to reciprocate. Gratitude is natural, but when it's twisted into debt, you're no longer appreciating love. You're repaying a silent, unwelcome contract. She's not being kind, she's using leverage. The long-term cost. Slowly, you stop asking yourself whether you actually want to say yes. You just say yes, because saying no feels cruel and ungrateful. You are trapped in a cycle where every act of kindness comes with invisible strings attached. That's not a relationship, that's an emotional ledger. The cold truth. Love gives without keeping score. Manipulation always sends you the bill. How to counter the leverage? Don't over-reward unsolicited favors. When she does something grand you never asked for, thank her, but keep your gratitude measured and neutral. A simple, "that was thoughtful, I appreciate it," is enough. Over-the-top gratitude only feeds the leverage she might use later. Separate kindness from obligation. If she brings up her sacrifice as proof you should do something in return, calmly make the distinction. I value what you did, but this decision has to be made on its own merit. Not because of what happened before. That line cuts the cord between her past act and your present choice. Watch for scorekeeping. True generosity doesn't tally points. If her kindness consistently circles back into guilt trips, recognize it for what it is: emotional bookkeeping disguised as love. For sudden physical affection. The anesthesia for conflict. You bring up a serious boundary. For example, you're uncomfortable with her constantly scrolling on her phone during dinner. Instead of a difficult, honest conversation, she suddenly turns into the most affectionate version of herself. Extra hugs, constant closeness, maybe even initiating intimacy out of nowhere. Within 48 hours, the tension you felt fades. Your initial clarity dissolves. You wonder if you overreacted. That's not resolution, that's sedation. The psychological trap. Hijacking biology. Physical affection is powerful. It's one of the strongest emotional currencies. But when it suddenly appears right after conflict, right after you draw a line, that's not about closeness, it's about control. This tactic works because it hijacks your biology. Intimacy floods your brain with oxytocin, the bonding hormone that makes you more trusting, more forgiving, and less defensive. Instead of confronting the issue, she pacifies you with feel-good chemicals. The problem is still there, buried under a layer of cuddles and kisses. The long-term cost: if every conflict ends with sudden affection instead of resolution, you're avoiding reality, and the root issue never gets fixed. Over time, you become conditioned. Set a boundary, get affection, drop the issue. That's not intimacy, that's behavioral training. The cold truth. If physical affection only shows up when you're upset, it's not love, it's anesthesia. And anesthesia doesn't heal the wound. How to counter the sedation: recognize and pause. When affection arrives suspiciously right after tension, don't let the warmth override your clarity. You must hold the line on the conversation. Reassert the conversation. A firm but calm response works. I appreciate the closeness, but I still want to finish what we were talking about first. Reset the sequence, flip the script. Make affection the reward that follows resolution, not a substitute for it. Once we sort this out, I'd love to just relax and be close again. Intimacy should never be a weapon used to erase the problem instead of solving it. 5. The "I did it for us" justification. Control dressed as commitment. Picture this. You find out she signed you both up for an expensive weekend couples retreat without asking. She presents it with a smile, saying, "I did it for us because I want us to grow together." When you explain you can't take the time off work, she flips the frame. "Why can't you see I'm doing this for us? Don't you care about our relationship?" The psychological trap: erasing consent. This is a genius tactic. By cloaking unilateral decisions in the language of us, she erases the fact that she never gave you a choice. Resistance to her move is framed as resistance to the relationship itself. You stop challenging the lack of collaboration and start defending yourself against the accusation of indifference. In that shift, she wins. The long-term cost. You're no longer a partner, you're a passenger. Every time she makes a move for us, without including you, she tightens her control while shrinking your voice. Your consent keeps disappearing, and you find yourself in a well-decorated dictatorship. The cold truth: partnership without consent is not partnership. It's control disguised as commitment. How to reassert partnership: acknowledge the intention, reassert the process first, neutralize the guilt. I appreciate that you want something good for us. Then immediately reassert the process. Next time, we need to talk about it first. I want to be part of the decision. Focus on principle, not feelings. The trap is when she shifts the focus to how hurt she feels. Stay anchored on the principle. I'm not questioning your care, I'm saying both of us need to decide together. That way, the guilt has no place to stick. Demand collaboration. A healthy partner values your input. If she keeps bypassing you and calling it love, you must recognize what's happening. Your role is being minimized. The moment you demand your seat back at the decision-making table, you reclaim your essential masculine power. We've uncovered 5 loving gestures that are, in reality, leverage. They are the exaggerated praise, the strategic tears, the selfless sacrifice, the seductive affection. and the "for us" excuse. Each of these tactics thrives on the same weakness: your instinct to respond with gratitude, empathy, and a fear of conflict. That's why so many men wake up years into a relationship feeling suffocated, wondering where their power went. It didn't vanish. It was traded away. One hidden invoice, one manipulated hug, one forced compliance at a time. Here's the hard truth: not every loving gesture is love. Sometimes it's control. But when you learn to slow down, separate the action from the demand, and test the intent, you take back your ground. You stop being managed, and you start leading. A real partner doesn't need tactics to keep you. She chooses you openly, without tricks, without hidden contracts. Love that is real doesn't need camouflage. If this resonated with you, subscribe now to Stoic Manhood Guide so you never miss the cold truths that keep you one step ahead. Drop a comment below. Have you ever seen these tactics in action? Your knowledge is your freedom.